And welcome to the Washup Walk-Ons podcast special edition episode, maybe. Uh, welcome to everybody on the YouTube who's watching this again. Preferred preferred consumption method. Go to the YouTube. It's going to become a how do I say this? A much more important aspect of how we do business around here on the Washup Walk-Ons later this year. I guess not really a big secret. Later on this fall, I plan on going live for every Monday and Tuesday Monday and Thursday show on the nights that we record them. So, uh, and I think it's funny where some networks or certain podcasts see each other as competitors. I look at a lot of the Iowa Everywhere stuff that Chris Williams and Chris Hassel, and you may have your opinions about them individually, but the way that they operate as a media company and the way that they put out shows and the way they do everything, all the little nuances of like the behind baseball or inside baseball industry type stuff, not the actual content that they're talking about. And I think one of the things that is great for them is that they do the live shows. They do them on Monday and Thursday mornings, which is a great spot to do them. Mondays and Thursdays somehow seem to be the two best days of the week for like news, and especially during the year. Great stuff just happens to be relevant on those days. I think an even better spot to do them could be in the evenings when we actually record these episodes. So, um, we're gonna be doing, uh, we're gonna be doing the basically a Sunday and Wednesday night show, which is our normal recording time, and the preview and recap episodes that you get every Monday, Thursday during the season will be live if you're able to make it in that form and fashion. Most people are a little bit more free uh, at that time of night. You know, you have kids. We usually record it right around bedtime or right after bedtime. So you should be able to make it if you're that kind of person who would like to tune in live and help add to the show. It'll be more interactive, comments, all the stuff, and engagement. You know, we're always looking to increase engagement around here. So we're excited about that. Those episodes will then be, of course, edited and put out on Mondays and Thursdays in the morning on the audio platforms as normal. But this is a way that we think we can we can gain a step, we can make a little progress, make some gains, and hopefully, you know, put the Washed Up Walk-Ons brand and entertainment in front of more people's eyes. That's all we want to do. Get it in front of more people so that we can, you know, continue our mission, which in fact, as we record this, there's a QR code for those watching the YouTube. Give us a like. The likes seriously help. All it takes is you literally clicking a thumbs up button, and that helps us a bunch, as well as comments. So comment about, you know, the bald head or uh, how much you love eggs or solar energy this episode. We would appreciate that. Join the army. I'll throw up some more QR codes along the way. As you've probably figured out in the first 3.5 minutes of this recording, I'm sitting here doing this solo. This is on Thursday, the 24th of April. You're going to hear this on Monday. And this is going to act as not only our main episode for the, you know, for the to start the week, but it's also going to fall in the line of press review shows because we got a presser. I didn't even know this was happening. It happened yesterday as of recording on the 23rd, Wednesday, with 1 week of spring ball basically to go, and 1.5 weeks. Or no, the spring game's, yeah, the spring game just happened. Yes, the spring game just happened. So we're in the final week as I record this, and we got to talk to the coordinators. Not me personally, not you personally, but Ike Colt, Leista Code, all the people. They got to go and uh, we got a solid, what was it, an hour and 9 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes, maybe, of Coach Woods, Coach Wallace. No, not Coach Wallace. I wish we got Coach Wallace. Coach Woods, Coach Parker, and Coach Lester. And these are quite honestly the most enjoyable like hours. It's just nostalgic for me because as a player, I used to sit in the meeting rooms and listen to these guys, and it was an unbelievable time in my life. Fond memories, all of that. So it takes me back, but I feel it's an underutilized part of what they're doing with their own media, with their own media relations. I mean, the live stream of this thing, I think total views on this video, and granted, it's only been a day, right? Less than a day since this happened, but they're the University of Iowa. Like they should have it's the Iowa football YouTube. We should be getting dozens of thousands of views on this, like from all the Iowa fans who care about Hawkeye football. And I don't think it's because people don't want to watch it or that they don't have the time. I think plenty of people have the time to sit at work and listen to this while they, on the other screen. I think it's because they don't know about it. And uh, what I'm about to do is break down the press conference and some of the main things that our three coordinators said. But all I'm doing is I'm just chop shopping the content that they put out there. Anybody could go and get their own, like have their own viewing experience for this 75 minutes worth of coordinators. And you don't have to listen to Tyler Kluver tell you about, the highlights and his thoughts about it. Now, some people might like to sit here and listen to the solo pod of me recap it, but it's not nearly as good as the real thing. And for any of you who haven't, for any of you who are like consistent consumers of our show and have not listened to Coach Woods and Coach Lester speak and answer questions, it is an absolute treat. I can't exactly say the same for Coach Parker. He's great, unbelievable coach, obviously, amazing at his job. He doesn't give it as much of the fun stuff at the podium. He's very short. There's a lot more coach speak. Um, and that's okay. There's no requirement for him to be fun and entertaining. But man, listening to Coach Woods and Coach Lester speak is like again, you guys know I'm not a football fan. I'm not a big sports fan. I'm just like your average sports guy, and this shit fires me up. So we're gonna get into it here. I don't have Kevin or Grant with me. Uh, Benefit of me not having a real job, or I guess the fact that this is my real job, or I'm at least holding on to it being my job for now, as long as it continues to bring in enough money, is that I'm the one that can do this at 9:47 a.m. on a Thursday. Kevin's off selling knee replacements to grannies, and Grant is putting braces on kids across the Dallas, Austin, Texas area. So you get me. Obviously, I've done these press review shows with David Eicholt in the past. Plan on doing those weekly again this fall. Was a massive hit. Likely will do those live as well. Um, but this was short notice. Again, I did not know this press conference was happening. Uh, it usually takes a couple days to schedule this with David. Obviously, short notice is tough on people, and he's got his own schedule and stories and all the shit that he does to pump stuff out. He can't just fit in an hour podcast. So you get me by myself, solo podcast. I truly wish that you guys knew the difficulty of speaking to a camera and a microphone by yourself for an hour, not having a ton of stops, not saying every other word, which I used to do, and now I only do it like every fourth word. So I'm getting better. I'm trying for you guys, the people. But I've got notes that I put down. I just watched the press conference, watched a lot of it twice, Jesus Christ, rewinded the YouTube, brought it back, watched it again, tried to understand some of the big points here. There's some exciting stuff. I'm sure I'll come up with a really exciting quote to clickbait people into really getting into this episode on the YouTube and the audio version so I can, get people to come listen to this. But there was some really good stuff, and I'm excited about it. I'll come back to this at the very end, but when I listen to Tim Lester talk, I quite literally am convinced that we're going to be a top 25 offense. I know that it's likely not going to happen, but when I listen to him speak, especially some of the nuance that's specific to this year, being in year 2, having a couple new analysts, having the staff in year 2 of his system, the guys in year 2 of his system, I literally sit here and think we're winning a fucking national championship. It's going to happen. And Tim Lester is going to take us there to the promised land. And KF is going to look like a genius in 3 to 5 years for this hire. I know that's probably not the case. But damn, does he make me excited about this season and what's to come for this offense. Always excited about the defense, obviously. Always excited about the special teams, obviously coming from myself. Um, but before we get into this, drop that thumbs up right below. Click it right now. If you're listening to this, go to the YouTube, your grandma's YouTube, doesn't matter, your brother's YouTube. Click the thumbs up. We're gonna get this. Let's get this video to like 200 likes. Let's get an all-time likes record for this. It helps the boys out. We're going into a dry season, so we need a little momentum. We need a little manufactured momentum here. The coordinators went in order of Parker, Woods, Lester. Some would say that's like the build. You just start basic football, just yeah, we're just trying to get better. Bill Belichick. You build into Coach Woods, who has his own little fun, unique way of interacting with the media. Nicest guy in the world. Just like looking people in the eye, making people feel like they're the only person in the room, saying thank you for coming. Opened his press conference or his talk with, "It's a beautiful day. You guys could be doing anything, but you chose to be here. We appreciate that." It's the people and the way that the people are at Iowa, and it always has been. Excuse me for taking a drink. And then Tim Lester at the end, who just, if you don't understand football, you can listen to this guy and feel like you understand football. It's just exciting, and the fact that he's got the reins of this offense, I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. So on the defensive side of things, they get right into it. Coach Parker doesn't say much in his opening statement. He basically opens it up for questions and is immediately asked about the linebackers, which is a huge deal this year. For those of you who are actively following along with us in this offseason, we got to talk with both Nick Jackson and Jay Higgins. Tried to get Kyler Fisher on here. I reached out. He hasn't responded. I don't know if he's even seen the message. If anybody has, this sounds so like petty or just like so non-professional, but hey, any of the walk-on army out there, if you guys have any direct contact or ever see Kyler Fisher walking around, tell him to check his DMs. Would love to talk to the guy. They're replacing a lot in that second level of the defense, and quite literally an All-American in Jay Higgins. Nick Jackson, who has 5,500 tackles or something like that. Hyperbole, but it felt like it. Dude just found the ball. Probably the best transfer portal get since the whole portal has become a thing and NIL and all this stuff for the Iowa brand. Gronowski's gonna lay claim to that later this year. Lucy Olson was great for the women's basketball team. Uh, the the entire men's basketball team is all transfers other than Cooper Koch. So, there's going to be some competition there. Nick Jackson, I think, currently holds that role, maybe tied with Lucy. Just unbelievably productive Hawkeyes the last year, and then Nick for 2 years. Parker mentions that you look at these guys and you have to look at what came before them to understand the standard that has been set. And he's right. It's daunting, and I can only imagine what I believe his name is Jaden Harrell and Carson Shire and a couple other of these younger linebackers. Those two are gosh, on the more veteran side now. If I was better at podcasting and doing this whole thing, I would have pulled up what years they are. Those guys are at least in their third year, potentially their fourth. And he kind of just talks about this. He goes back and mentions Campbell, guys before that. And he nonchalant, casually is just like, this is the role that these guys have to fill. And he says it confidently. And we've heard Jackson and Jay talk about it and how they're pretty excited for what those guys are going to do this year. And we've heard Coach Wallace talk about how well those guys are prepared, probably because of him. He's doing special things in that linebacker room. And you just kind of get the expectation that these two are going to step in and we're not really going to miss a beat. And I've heard it from a couple other national, and who knows what these national guys know, but they're like, I don't think we're going to really take a step back here. And in some sense, you're going to take a step back Now, it's not 100%. I guess Jaden Harrell and, or Carson Shire, one of them could be in a consensus All-American. If they are, I don't know which potions, wizard potions, Goat Wallace is brewing in that linebacker room, but something special is going on. It's unbelievable. But I think the standard, they will meet the standard and exceed the standard of Iowa football linebacker, which is unbelievable to say when they just haven't had any legitimate, like true starting Iowa experience yet. So really excited about them, and they move on to talking about the D line. Lost a lot there too, mostly in the form of YA Black. Excuse me with the yawns. When you talk a lot, your body does something where it like yawning is to try and get oxygen for more wind to speak to you guys. So I'm sorry about that. Um, got a couple transfers. Hawthorne and Pace talks about how they're going to be in the mix right away. You know, you could see them in the rotation literally on the first series of a game. They are veteran players. They are solid. I got the sense from listening to them speak that they're just low floor or high floor guys, where you're just going to be able to plug them in, and maybe they're not all Americans, but they're certainly able to play and stand up to a Big Ten caliber offensive line, Big Ten schedule, and they are going to definitely help the depth of this team. And then he talks about Llewellyn, who Grant is big on. That's Grant's guy, and how he has an understanding of the game that he hasn't had in the past few years, and he's really starting to sense that senior sort of veteran feel from Max, and that's huge because he made some massive plays last year. Probably means he's going to make more massive plays this year. Talks about Herkett on the outside, and says they're not where they want to be yet. But the sense I get, because if you listen to these guys enough, they are truthful and they are honest and will say things that give you insight. All of the pieces are there. They're not missing any piece that they need on the D line this year. They're gonna have to get there. And hey, it's April. That's what spring is for. Again, it's Coach Parker and the Iowa defense. So you just kind of trust that they're going to get there. And as far as a little bit more nuance on the inside, you know, the D tackle spots, he mentioned how YA Black played more reps than most guys do at that position, and to fill his one void that he's now left as he exits the Iowa program, it's probably going to be more by committee. But you know, again, they have the pieces to do that. It might just be more of a rotation. So that's what we're looking at on the D line. Immediately then gets asked about the big plays that they gave up last year. And we all saw them. Iowa State was probably the one that hurt the most. Not probably, it certainly was the one that hurt the most. You could say Ohio State, but Jesus, I mean, that Ohio State team is just unstoppable. And it's interesting the way he sort of talks about this secondary. Uh, Obviously, Xavier Wampa is the 5-star veteran of this group and is being looked to be the guy. And he has now shifted positions from, I'm going to get this wrong, free safety to strong safety. Is that correct? I don't know. I I'm an idiot. He switched from one safety spot to the other. Coach Parker says that he's seen just in the last 3 weeks massive improvement from Xavier in the new spot. He looks happier there, and let's see, I put it down, more comfortable in that position. I don't think that Coach Parker just throws around words like that. It just doesn't seem like he doesn't seem like the kind of guy to just like say that shit, especially when some of the other answers are so bland and coach speak that when he does offer a little bit of detail, it just seems genuine and like, why would he have any reason to make that up? He's seen a lot of secondary play, a lot of DBs. I mean, we're talking Cooper DeJean, Dane Belton, Amani Hooker, Geno Stone, I Desmond King, And he says that this guy looks more comfortable. He's seen a ton of improvement, and he seems happier in that position. Wampa hasn't been bad for the Hawkeyes. He just hasn't been great. And with all these things, all these steps that he's taking in spring, give him a summer and a camp and the motivation of, "Hey, bud, this is your last year to go do it." I like where we're going with X. I think we could have a big year from him. Uh, but going back to that question of why they let those big plays happen last year, he does mention that, hey, they were 11th in scoring defense and like 28th or 29th in total defense. Scoring defense, honestly, quite honestly, is all that matters. Who cares if you give up 700 yards, but you gave up 7 points? You're still probably going to win the game. Now, obviously, those are going to correlate, but 11th in the country, and he sits there and he says it's still not where we want it to be. Talks about not giving up explosive plays, and he said, or his answer to why it happened was they were trying to force things and that they need to let the plays come to them, which is so Iowa defense. You hear Kevin talk about it all the time. He's, they know what we're doing on defense, right? And maybe at times last year we got a little bit exotic, probably the wrong word, but for Iowa, we got exotic. We tried to do some stuff that we shouldn't have. We should have let those plays come to us. Sit back, relax, play your defense, and just bend, don't break. And at a couple times we got beat, we got broke. It cost us. It hurt us in some games. And it sounds like they're kind of taking that approach to this spring and how they approach teaching some of these young guys, getting the new rotation figured out, and how they'll sort of enter games next season is like, hey, we just got to be us. Take our time, let the plays come to us. Don't force things. That's Iowa defense. Let's see if we have anything else on the defensive notes. Competitive this spring. Iowa football, specifically in the last few years, but I would say mostly all the time in the past, and this is how it is a lot of times with just any football team, but Iowa specifically because of the bias towards great defense and just an okay offense. When you're in the out of season, the defense always has the upper hand. Always. The defense is used to reacting to the offense. The defense isn't calling a play where certain routes have to be run, timing. They're reactionary. It gives them the upper hand because when you have new players in new offensive positions, the timing isn't there. They're figuring that out. They don't have the connection, the rhythm, the groove, the timing, the chemistry that a team maybe in week 6 of the regular season would have. So the defense stomps the offense a lot. There's a lot of interceptions. There's a lot of guys getting to the quarterback because nobody's open. There's a lot of tackles in the back. Like, this is just how it goes. And Parker offers up that it has been competitive. And we're going to get to Leicester later, trust me. They are quote, they're trying to get our eyes all over the place. And then I just put down the note, Leicester is cooking. The motion and all of the, the intricacies of Leicester's new offense and the stuff that he's doing, especially when compared to what we used to do with Brian, is mentioned later on. We'll talk about it here at the end of this show. But you got a quick glimpse of they're giving Parker and the defense fits with all the pre-snap motion and different plays that they're running. And there's a great quote later on about how from Lester. I'm just going to say it now. Maybe I'll circle back on it if I remember, about how they're trying to run the same plays in as many different ways as they can. They're trying to get to the same plays, the same routes, the same concepts in as many different ways, meaning pre-snap motions, formations, options that they can use. And again, I don't know shit about offense. I'm not an X's and O's guy. It just seems like there's a lot more. There's a lot more to this offense than there was with Brian, which is crazy because the whole thing about Brian was like their offense was hard to install. But now we're doing better with what seems like a much more complicated and intricate system. I don't know. It's interesting to listen to. That was a fun tidbit from Parker about how Lester and the offense is kind of giving them fits. Um, a great quote from Coach Parker. Someone asked about watching Cooper pick six in the Super Bowl. He says, "I don't like watching the Super Bowl unless we have a guy in it." Seemed kind of crazy to me. The fact that he loves football so much, but he's not going to watch the Super Bowl. Probably doesn't like the advertisements and all the fanfare that goes along with it. Um, he is asked about this might have been the quote of the press conference. While he generally doesn't give the funny stuff out, someone asked who their number one corner was and what that was looking like, and he's like, "Well, I don't know. I don't necessarily want to give the answers to the test. I like to keep it like I keep my wife off balance, keep them guessing." And that got a really good chuckle. I laughed out loud watching it, sitting here at the desk. I was just like, "What? Hilarious!" Like Coach Parker, good for one liner. Um, it's like when KF mentions Mary. It's just like so funny. He's like, best time of my life when I'm coaching football, except for when I'm with Mary." Oh shit. Okay. But then he does elaborate and basically says like, yeah, TJ Hall is basically our number one, and Deshaun Lee is doing really well after that. I do think that there's a lack of the dude, like that guy. We've had Cooper, we've had even Jamari last year to an extent. Um, Desmond back in my time, Matt Hankins, Riley Moss. We've had that guy who's like, well, you're not throwing that way. Like you're likely not going to challenge that guy. I don't think we have that right now. I'm not saying we couldn't. I do think something I didn't write down or something I might have saw on Twitter from one of the reporters who covered this press conference said something along the lines of like they have seen TJ make a ton of progress, which is what we want. I don't know if we have like that lockdown, shut down one side of the field kind of guy yet. Would be great to get there. Again, I think the floor is high. I think these guys will be great for us in 2025. I don't know if they're going to strike fear in an opposing quarterback's, opposing offense's hearts when they line up against us, but that's okay. That's okay. We play as a whole defense, and that's how this whole thing works. Uh, and then last thing I had as a defensive note was that Lutmer, while he's come along, he's going to get a lot of playing time. He is definitely in the mix to be a dude. Uh, he needs to be more vocal when it comes to leadership, but Cohen Entringer is not going to have an issue with being vocal. He's naturally more of a vocal leader. And Coach Parker mentioned that both of those guys have that natural ability, that instinct that starts in your positioning and how you line up and how you get into your stance, and it transfers from your feet to your hips to your hands, which is all super important as a DB. And that he mentioned Cooper DeJean again. He said Cooper was great, had a special talent for that, and he sees a little bit of that in Zach Lutmer and Cohen Entringer, which is really really exciting because we've got those guys for some time still. Um, Side note, Iowa football Twitter put out like one of those fun videos where they put up a question for guys to answer when they come off the practice field like 2 weeks ago. Cohen Entringer is built like a fucking cyborg. I mean, this guy is, when you talk about built different, like there's some people on earth that are meant to be athletes. That's the guy. That's the Tristan Wirfs, the Noah Fant, the Brandon Smith. Cohen Entringer is an alien, and I cannot wait to watch him play football this year. Want to take a quick second in this latter part of the April month. I guess this will probably be the second to last episode for now that we've got these two guys on. To thank our sponsors, we are presented this month by Eagle Point Solar, bringing you the sun. The sun don't stop shining. I'm telling you, I sat down and I learned how all this stuff worked with the solar panels, and it's obviously an investment. This is like, this is like putting away for your retirement. These things eventually pay themselves off though, and now you're just sitting on free energy. And there's different ways with net metering that you can earn credits. Energy company ends up paying you. Oh, what happens when it's a day like today? I think currently right now it's cloudy, it's rainy, doesn't matter. These things can gain energy. I learned that at night, if you have a full moon, a bright full moon, they can they can suck up energy from the moon. How about that? Go to eaglepointsolar.com and you can do your free solar analysis. Again, you're just going to send them like 12 months, like the last year of energy bills, square footage of your home. I think they go through all of that to kind of measure what your certain situation is. And then they're going to come back to you with, hey, this is exactly the numbers. I think the fun thing about the Eagle Point Solar stuff, the solar energy stuff is like, it's basically a math equation. Like, yes, they're trying to sell you their solar panels and their system, but it kind of sells itself. Like, it's the fucking sun. It just burns hot, lava hot all the time. Why aren't we all solar? Why isn't everything solar? That's what I'm trying to figure out. So, it might not be right for you. You might not have the current financial position to do it. You might be about to move out of your house, which probably wouldn't be a time that makes sense. But like for someone like me who's in the process of looking into this, that's an add value right there to your home. That is, I mean, could you imagine if you just sit there right now and think, if I didn't have my energy bill every month, what a relief would that be? You know? And then on the other side of things, so again, eaglepointsolar.com. Iowa Egg Council continuing to sponsor us. We're gonna have both of these companies, both of these great businesses on for a month later in the year. I think August, Egg Council's coming back on, Eagle Point later in October. The Egg Council is gonna be doing a ton of stuff at the Iowa State Fair later this summer. Obviously, I will be there. Maybe we'll do a collaboration. Maybe we'll do a podcast from the Iowa Egg Council booth. Who knows? I don't know what kind of things we can do. I know this, they're gonna have egg on a stick. Somebody in the Discord just posted for like uh they're making food for their 3 kids in the morning, and they just posted a picture of a massive skillet of eggs scrambled. Just an unbelievable decision. Just a prime decision. I had 3 eggs this morning in butter because my daughter opened a protein yogurt and didn't eat it last night. So that made up for the other 2 eggs worth of protein this morning. I only had 3, but I've got about 50 eggs from Costco sitting in my fridge right now, and it is just a staple. It's how I start every single morning. You've no bullshit. We don't ever say anything about the egg council to our guests, but guest after guest after guest, including the podcast that we just recorded last night, number 600 with, you'll have to wait and find out. Every single one is like, "Yeah, I eat eggs all the time." If you wanna be an athlete, just be an everyday athlete, get some eggs on your plate, man. And when you start the day with protein, you realize it's better for your body. I'm not gonna go into all the science, it's better for your body, and protein is usually pretty satiating. Like, have you ever tried to eat, like, 600 calories worth of tuna or 600 calories worth of scrambled eggs? It's impossible. So you're not gonna overeat, it's gonna be naturally calorie balancing for your diet. Shout out to the Egg Council. We'll get into the special teams and offensive side of this podcast here. I really am gonna talk for an hour, and I'm gonna take another drink. Alright, let's get into the offensive side of the ball here. Uh, Obviously, he's asked about Stevens right away. This might have even been in his opening statement. He just says, "Stevens is kicking it as good as he has seen here." He's been the special teams coach, solely the special teams coach since 2017. He was there for my entire career. I think he came on in like 2010. He was there before I was. So we're out at a decade and a half now of seeing a lot of kickers. Mike Myers, Marshall Kane, Miguel Racinos, Keith Duncan, Caleb Shudak, and now Drew Stevens. It's a lot of great kickers, and he says he is kicking it as well as he has seen during his time at Iowa. Then, and I'm just gonna bring this up now, even though it comes up later in the questions. Someone asks, "What's his potential?" I think it might have been Lystico. Like, what's his potential? And you can tell that he has fun answering this question because like it's always a dick measuring contest, right? And this is like he gets to stand up there and talk about how his kicker, if need be, could probably hit 65 plus, 68. Says he's seen 68. I'm going to give you a little insight here. This is where I can really provide the most experience and insight. Um, there was a day in Kinnick in 2013 where it was a little windy. There was a south to north breeze. Yeah, a northbound breeze. Not super windy, not like, you're not out there and you're wearing a sweatshirt or like, a jacket and it's like whipping back and forth, but it was pretty breezy enough to affect a football flight. So it was wind aided. I snapped a football three snaps in a row to Alden Hafar, a name that most of you don't know, but it was an absolute boomer that kicked at Iowa Western for a year and then walked on and spent a little time with us. Marshall Kane and Mike Meyer, all three of them cleared 60 by about 3 to 5 yards. Easy. One rep after another. Bang, bang, bang. It's a day I'll never forget because 60 yards at the time was like, holy shit. That's a far field goal. If you've never stood 42 yards out, which is where the ball is placed, you add the 10 yards from the end zone and 8 yards back where the tee is placed, or I guess where the holder's at. So you add 18 to whatever the yard marker is. You ever stand at a 42-yard line, you look at the field goal, you're like, God damn, that's a long way. All three of them banged it through. And I thought, this is insane. Like, there's no way there's another team in the country that has three kickers that can just bang 60, 60, 60. Um, and it's probably true. I don't think I ever saw that again in my 5 years there. Duncan Keith had a strong leg. He was probably more accurate than he was strong, and I think he would admit that. Obviously lacked in the kickoff game. Shudak, strong leg. Miguel eventually had a really strong leg. All of these guys I saw make 60 plus at times. Marshall, I think, still has the most leg whip I've ever seen and punch through a ball. And I think we made 63 to 65 with him one time. I think we might have backed it up to 67. The fact that Drew Stevens has hit 68, likely wind aided, but still end of game situation, end of half situation, that is unbelievable. And the vibe I'm getting is that this guy's an NFL kicker. Like he's an NFL guy in waiting. He's got 1 year to show that he's ultra consistent. Get back to maybe that mark that he hit 85, 90% freshman year. And they talk about him, LeVar talks about him in a way that like the leadership has just increased by leaps and bounds. This guy has matured just unbelievable amounts from his freshman year. And I know that not a lot of people care about that, but when you get mental maturity and you start to become a responsible young adult, I went through this in the exact same room during the exact same years of my life. The consistency and ability to perform well on the field becomes a lot easier and a lot more expected or a lot easier expected. I have really, really high hopes for Drew Stevens in the unit this year, and I'm excited when I listen to him say that. He says consistently, basically, like anytime, 55, 58. And I put out a tweet when I saw this from Lystico. I retweeted it or reposted it and said, now we just have to give them the opportunity. Because too often, and I understand we've had Torrey Taylor. Guy has a fucking pitching wedge on his hip. Just elite all-time talent, steps into the league and was top half of the league in punting. Like an automatic top 15 punter in the world in his first year in the NFL. So I understood we had that the last few years. But with the offense that we had, it was wild that we would sometimes go for it. So, between the 30 and 40 yard, the opponent's 30 and 40. And if we were backed up closer to that 40-yard marker, where the field goal is going to be 55, 58, 60 yards, we would not take a chance. And I'm telling you right now that we can take that chance. Drew Stevens can make that kick. I've been calling for it for years. So hopefully we see KF pull the trigger a little bit more this season. On the long snapping front, obviously we lose Luke Elkin. Talk about him in a second. Ike Speltz is from, I believe, Van Meter, not too far away from me here in Waukee, and is entering his third season. And this spring, I'd love to talk to him. Hopefully I remember this when he's done with his career and we have him on the show. He's doing the ones and the twos this spring, and he's the only snapper on the roster. That rarely happens. Not sure how they let it get to that point when I was in my first spring ball in the spring of 2014. But that is what I was doing. And they use 2 PAT field goal units. And they rotate back and forth around. If you're watching the YouTube, you can kind of see like one's on the right side of the field, one's on the left hash, and they rotate around in a circle. They hit the same spots, but they're doing it at different times, and they go back and forth. So what Speltz is doing, he's running from one unit to the other, the ones to the twos, to the ones to the twos, and he's taking every rep. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but this guy's going through hell every day that they have field goal period. And I got a lot of respect for him. It sounds like they're pretty confident in him. The fact that they don't have anybody else on the roster right now makes me think they're probably okay with him. Maybe a little bias there because when I was the only one on the roster, I like to think that they felt pretty confident in me. I ended up working out. And just before this, they did add another guy in the portal, Bryant Worrell from Boston College. He's going to have 1 year left remaining. Coach Woods isn't able to talk about him, I guess, because he isn't on campus. He's not on the team. He committed already, so I don't know why you wouldn't be able to talk about him. But we did add what I project to be our backup long snapper. I think Bryant Worrell probably thinks he could be the starter, and he's going to win that job in camp. But this I don't know a lot about the guy. I know I went back and kind of followed his Instagram and his career. He went to Old Dominion to play long snapper, I think, in 2020. I think in 2020. Didn't play, redshirted, quit football, went to Old Dominion for another year in 2021 just as a student. Then for 2 years transferred to, oh god, what was it's like Henry, and is a D2 school out in Virginia that's like uh it's not William and Henry, it's Henry and Emory and Henry or something like that. I'd never heard of this place in my life. Snapped for them for 2 years in 2022 and 2023, and then transfer portaled to Boston College for last year, and was their long snapper for the year. Now in his so this will be his 6th year. He is going to transfer into Iowa this summer, and he probably thinks he's going to be the starter. I know Ike Speltz thinks he's going to be the starter because he's taking all the reps right now and he's their guy. So there will be at least a competition or at least some kind of battle there. I expect Speltz to come out with that, and they feel confident about him at the long snapper position. They're asked about the 105 roster limit and how that affects the special teams room, and this is something that I've been meaning to do a whole episode on. It hurts the specialists bad. There was a time when we had four snappers, 4 kickers, and 4 punters. Maybe one of the kicker punters was a combo guy. But it was not totally unheard of for us to have 10, 11, 12 guys in the special teams room. We didn't have enough seats. A couple guys had to stand in the back. I think there's only 10 seats in that room. Maybe they've added more. And basically Woods elaborated on this and said the whole goal before was you want to have an older guy who's kind of projected as the guy. You want to have a number two who's really close and can challenge that guy, compete with him, kind of push the starter. And then you want to have a third guy at each position, punter, kicker, long snapper, to kind of be younger, clearly behind the other two, but gets worked into the fray and eventually works his way up to the two and maybe the one. And that's sort of the hierarchy of each specialist position. And now with 105 roster limit, you're just not going to have three guys. You basically and they're going to have to use either elite freshman talent who just step in and are ready. Somebody like, I'm not going to call myself elite, but I would have qualified as someone who could have stepped in and at least been a two right away, if not started right away. And you're going to just have two guys who are capable of doing it at all times. Just in case one guy gets hurt, the second guy can also do it at near the same level or at least a standard that's acceptable. And that's just going to be the way it is at kicker, punter, long snapper. You're going to have six guys in the room, maybe a seventh. And I'm telling you right now, that's not going to be a long snapper. It's going to be a kicker punter combo guy who can do both, who can be the third string at both. And then the third string long snapper is 100% going back. And I'd say this hurts because there's so many guys who are now not going to have roster spots, but it's 100% going back to a D lineman or a tight end or a linebacker who just does it as an auxiliary skill. And it is what it is. So he talked about that and how that was tough. And then they got into some deeper conversation about some guys who are in the gunner conversation. Alex Moda, some kid named Eichmann. Don't know his first name. They're both in the gunner convo. Says they've both been disruptive on special teams. It's basically what you want as a young guy. Some guys who are going to kind of take over that core workhorse kind of guy. They're not the linebacker yet. They're not the the DB yet on the defense. They're a second string. They're maybe a third string, but they're a young guy who's athletic as hell and physically ready to play. Cam Buffington, Preston Rees, Derek Weiskopf, all guys who I think are linebackers who are going to become the core. They're going to become the main guys who are just they're eating blocks, they're downfield getting tackles, they're fucking causing havoc on all the special teams. All of these young linebackers are just ready to eat, basically, and they said that they're doing great. All of these guys, I don't even follow recruiting, but all of these guys are dudes whose names I saw and saw great things about. The Preston Reese kid is a guy who we just talked about in that lifting record. He's like I mean, all of Twitter came out and informed me who he was and how he dominated Iowa football last year. He just back squatted like 540 pounds or something stupid. Like, so that gives me a lot to be excited for. And then, lastly was asked about Elkin, his chances at the next level. This obviously hits close to home. Something that I never got to do. Jealous of Luke Elkin. Jealous of Casey Kreider. Really surprised that that Subert never got a chance because Subert was 6'2", 6'3". I mean, Subert was a big kid and a good snapper. But I don't know. There might just be some intangible thing with long snappers that guys in the NFL see, and they just point out like this is a guy that can do it. Maybe I'm wrong about myself. Maybe just was not an NFL talent snapping wise, and I'm just blaming it on the shortness thing. But Coach Wood said that he's had plenty of people reach out league-wise about Luke Elkin, and he's had several people come to work him out for individual workouts in Iowa City. I'll tell you this, I didn't get a single one of those fucking things. Nobody ever reached out. I'm talking zero. Nobody ever came to work me out in Iowa City during that spring of NFL draft prep. So I would say this kid's got a real shot, and it doesn't surprise me. I'd love to see him catch on and get another job and be the second active Hawkeye long snapper in the league, and just have the Hawks have the black and gold representing 1/16th of the NFL at the long snapper position. That would tickle me pink. That's all we got for the special teams. Take another drink here. Again, if you don't want to listen to me do this, just go watch the video. I do get to give my insights, and that's something you won't get, but It is what it is. Finally, we move to the offense, and I'm gonna go for over an hour on this thing. Jesus Christ. Asked immediately about Bryce George, the transfer, and what it's looking like, where he's gonna fit in. I thought it was an interesting story. He actually recruited Bryce George when he was at Western Michigan, and so it's funny how these recruiting games work, where he happened to know the family, he happened to know the kid. Um, And, who knows how far that went in Lester's familiarity. This Bryce George guy was deciding between USC and Iowa, and he chose Iowa out of Ferris State. It sounds like they're really solid with Dunker at right tackle. And so the question is, and that could change, but the way he answered the question was that they feel really good about Dunker there and what they have there. And Bryce George is going to maybe compete with Trevor Lauk, Jack Dotzler for the left tackle spot. Dotzler and Lauk, both young guys who Eichholt has talked about, uh, big names in the recruiting kind of scene as well that have come up, and it's kind of feels like it's their time. And we have Logan Jones, we have Bo Stevens, who both have a ton of experience. It sounds like we've got depth that we haven't had in a long time. And adding this Bryce George guy, I think a D2 All American at Ferris State, isn't going to hurt. One of those three is probably going to end up as the left tackle, or if for some reason Dunker ends up being the left tackle guy, one of them is going to end up at right tackle. And we feel pretty good about our line, heading into next year, which is crazy, but sort of what you get when you put in the time, right? We've put in all this time and we just did the gambit of the offensive linemen, Ellsbury, Richmond, Connor Colby. All these guys spent the last few years, and it felt like, damn, we just didn't have it at the offensive line spot for so long. And then finally last year, we broke through in the running game, was better in the passing game. Now we have a spot where, okay, the guys who now have to step in and fill in are at the point in their individual careers where it makes sense to do that. They aren't thrown in the fire as an 18, 19-year. So that'll be fun to see later this fall. And he says, he's pretty much letting Barnett figure that out. And they're playing with a lot of different rotations, a lot of different permutations, orientations, fucking United Nations of the offensive line in Iowa City. So they're going to figure that out. So gets asked about Mark Gronowski. He says he's throwing a Nerf ball, tongue in cheek, kind of makes a joke, says, I'd like to see him throw a real one eventually. He's obviously seen him throw plenty of those on tape. But just talking to Mark, you can tell he's played a lot of football, the way he talks about defenses, the way he talks about coverages, scheme. And he almost says that with a smile on his face, this little smirk that's like, they feel so damn confident in Mark Gronowski, even though he's hurt and isn't going through spring, that it makes me feel confident. That's just it. That's the way it feels. Um, he mentions that, and this was sort of a hot clip that went around on Wednesday when the press conference hit. He mentions that a lot of the receivers are first off, he says they are a faster team right now. And I'm thinking about using this as the clickbait thumbnail. They are a faster team and their passing game is so much further along than it was last year. And he says it helps when you know what you're doing. It helps when you learn the routes. And when you understand the routes and you understand the scheme, you can run. And when you run, the offense gets faster. And they're fast right now. And that makes me excited. Fully tented to the 10th degree. And he says it with a smile and he's like excited. It's just fun to see him talk about the you can tell they're actually making progress. And last year wasn't bad. Last year was like, holy shit, 72nd in the country after being dead last the last 2 or 3 years. Like we actually did some things. There was excitement. And we're getting better. We're getting faster. Hmm. Intriguing. He talks about part of that is that the offense wide receivers, tight ends specifically, are starting to learn the coverages, the defensive coverages, and how that relates to what they're doing when they go and run a route or when they run a play or when they, just the intricacy of how that works in a 8 play, 10 play, 15 play set and what they're trying to do and set up the defense for. And I don't it certainly was not a shot at Brian, but he says, "I don't know how much they did that before. I don't know how many of them truly knew about that stuff before I got here." One more thing where you're like, "Hmm, Tim Lester was the right hire. It was a good idea to get Brian Ferentz out of that position and get somebody who has a little bit more experience." Uh, mentions how who was it? Dayton Howard. He asked him a question, and he started the answer of that question with, "Well, I know they're in this coverage because of what we did in the motion." And Tim Lester stands up and starts clapping. He's like, "That's a great way to start that answer." So these guys are getting it. The offense is coming along. Never fear. The Hawks are going to score some fucking points. And by the way, we did last year too. Caleb Johnson about to get drafted as well, maybe not tonight. He's going to get drafted this weekend. He helped us a lot there. We're going to continue to score a lot of points next year. It's going to be awesome. He didn't go out recruiting this year, Tim Lester. This spring, he did not go out on the recruiting trail. He stayed back. And his answer, he was asked how big that was for the development of the offense and what he was able to do in Iowa City. And he kind of chuckled and said it was huge, if we're being honest. Are they just making all the right decisions? And again, I could be duped. I could be fooled. They could just be telling us what we want to hear because it's the press conference and they want everything to sound good. I don't think it's that. You listen to these guys and it feels like there's something special brewing. I'm just saying. The way that he was able to talk to the young quarterbacks. Jackson Shaggy Scooby-Doo Stratton is the longest tenured Hawkeye quarterback in the room. So what he was able to do with Jackson and Hank Brown, solely until he transferred, Gronowski, they have been able to sit down and have conversations and watch film together long before spring ball started happening. And he said that was massive for the development of the offense and the development of those guys as players. Throws in a note that Logan Jones basically answers every coverage question right when asked, and it kind of puts people on their ass. And it was just kind of a nod to how cerebral he is. And I believe he's starting to enter the zone of Austin Blythe, Tyler Linderbaum savviness, I think, at least from my perspective. Obviously, Blythe had like a 7-year NFL career. Linderbaum fucking might go for 15 or 20 and be the best center of all time. I don't think he has. Linderbaum is a special talent. I don't think Logan Jones is Tyler Linderbaum. He might be Austin Blythe, though. Like, that's a good comp. And I think Logan Jones could be a starting center in the league, too. Is asked about Warren Ruggiero and if they're going to add the slow mesh to the offense, and he just groans. And it's kind of like, we've had this conversation. It's interesting. He says, like, the slow mesh is essentially, he uses the word expensive, meaning if you're going to do the slow mesh and it's going to work, you basically have to use it all the time. And I believe the concept of that is basically like it's RPO, but it quite literally is slow. And so you're just holding that ball in the running back's pocket for time and time and time. And sometimes you pull it and sometimes you give. And you basically have to run that RPO action on every single play for it to really fuck with the defense. Because now you just get into a game of like, okay, is he pulling it or is he not this time? Right. And I don't think that's what they want to do. He doesn't say anything about adding it to it, but he does go into a conversation about Ruggiero and how he has been, or Ruggiero, I got to figure out how to say it, and how it's nice to have another guy who understands the exact system he's trying to run. Talks about his history with him and how he met him and how they've stayed in touch for the last 10 years and how he was the guy they wanted to bring in for this position. um, and how beneficial he's going to be this season getting ahead on game plans. Game planning is going to be a huge part of his deal and how important that is against other defenses, opposing defenses. So it sounds like that relationship and what he's been able to add. Not only that, but he also sits in the quarterback room with them. I think I put it here. I don't think maybe I didn't, but he is going to help the offense in ways that just simply wasn't possible last year. And so all the things are starting to kind of line up as you sit in here and listen to this. Um, had an awesome quote, and I'm going to quickly dive into or just pull a thing from my line of work, which is fitness, and a grander philosophy kind of thing that relates and is analogous to this. When I work with a client on the fitness side of things, I want to take them from I want to take them across the spectrum. Okay, we're all on the spectrum of uh, sickness to fitness. The middle of that, imagine sickness is one side, disease, cancer, all these different things. Like that's one side of the spectrum. Fitness, like the most fit people in the world, the most healthy, like I don't know, 27-year-old Tour de France biker, CrossFit Games champion, they are on the far side of fitness. Wellness, just general average wellness, is in the middle of that. And you can't get from sickness to fitness without first crossing through the spectrum of, oh, I'm becoming healthy. I'm now well. I'm now starting to get fit. He makes a very similar claim or a similar kind of breakdown of the way that the offense needs to operate. It's almost like a sick offense to a really fit offense. But the way he describes it was inefficient to efficient to explosive. And that's just not something I've ever heard described before. It was in response to a question asked to him about cutting the numbers in half, right? He comes in, we're 132nd in the country in offense. He cuts that to 72. He's asked again, do you want to cut that down again? Like, can you get us into the top 40? Is that the goal? And he talks about how he hasn't sat down. They haven't talked about what their goals are. And I don't even know, to be quite honest, if they'll sit down and be like, hey, we'd really like to be ranked 38th in offense this year. Well, how do you know what 38th is going to be? And knowing the way that Kirk does things at the top, it's more like, man, just make sure we have a productive offense that wins us ball games. Like, we just want to we'd love to be 12-0. I don't care if we're 62nd in offense. Let's be 12-0, right? But the way he described that was before he got here, the offense was really inefficient. It was not working. They've last year made the running game efficient. The passing game still needed to get there. And now as they work their way into efficiency, then the goal is to eventually become explosive. I think that's a great way to put it. And that's a great way to break it down so that you can take actionable steps to get there in the off season, in the spring session, like such they are in now. Again, when I listen to Tim Lester, it's just like, feed me more. Last thing he says specifically about personnel is that, Omar Young is the new running backs coach. Um, and he took over a really healthy room, a very, very healthy room. It's probably going to be running back by committee, but he feels like there is a ton of talent in that room, and they don't seem worried about the running backs at all. Um, Lastly, he kind of finishes up with more of that game planning talk about Warren and another analyst. I didn't catch his name. That both understand the system so well, and that he is so ultra excited about the way they are clicking because now all of these coaches, Abdul Hodge, um, oh god, now I'm gonna forget all of the who's our wide receivers. Budmeyer, all these guys are now in a second year of the system where they understand it, and Tim Lester is getting to spend less time coaching the coaches, who then have to coach the players because now the coaches understand it. He can spend more time on the stuff he wants to spend. Warren and this other analyst are doing a ton of work and helping them in the game planning sense. It's all starting to mesh together. And I just put down as a note, when he talks about how much better it's been and all the progress they're making, it feels like we're going to win a national championship. And maybe we aren't. I know it's not that easy, but it is super exciting to sit there and listen to Tim Lester talk, as well as Woods and Parker. Hear about these guys. It's the dead of the offseason. You'll want to know what's going on with the Iowa football players. This is the stuff. If you do not listen to this press conference, you don't consume these things, go to the Iowa Hawkeyes YouTube channel and subscribe. And then, whenever these come up every couple months, you can just watch it directly instead of listening to my dumbass talk about it. But I'm glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. Again, if you haven't given us the like, give us the like, the thumbs up, give us a subscribe. We're trying to hit 5,000 subscribers. We're going to do something fun for 5,000. And thank you for being here. This is this is the end of spring. The boys are done with spring ball. We're going into a little dead end of spring, summer period here. But boys and girls, before we know it, we're going to be staring down the barrel. 3-ish months, we're going to be staring down the barrel of camp and a ton of content and all that stuff coming through. The game starting up in late August, September. It's right around the corner. It's there. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. My voice, I can tell, is about to be gone after talking for almost 70 minutes. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Shout out to Eagle Point Solar and Iowa Egg Council for sponsoring the show. And we will be back on Thursday with another show. Then we'll see you.